everyone. Welcome to this edition of the CI Practitioners Corner, a web series hosted by LMA's Competitive Intelligence SIG. I'm especially excited to continue this conversation with Lynne, Associate Director of Data Sciences and Analytics with Baker Botts. Our first series focused on her career in CI, where we got to chat all things data. And in this conversation with Lynne, it was very clear that her level of curiosity sets her apart and has allowed her team to evolve. So today we really wanted to chat with Lynne more about why you should set time aside for your continued education and resources that she finds helpful. So with that, Lynne, tell us a little bit more about your data strategy and vision for the team and how being a lifelong learner has helped you to execute on this vision.
Hey, Rachel, thanks for having me back. I'm surprised anybody wants to hear from me again, but here we are. I love it. I just want to be clear from the outset. Even though I think I am set apart from my peers because I love to learn, this has been something that's going on since I was probably 5 or 6 when I was doing like the summer reading clubs at the library. So this has been a sickness that I've had for a very long time, and it's just evolved over time as my interests and career has sort of evolved. I mean, I love what I do, but let's just get that out of the way. I think I might have said that in the last call, but I just want to reiterate that. It makes it easy to be a lifelong learner when you love what you do. And I know not everybody can say that for themselves. So I know I'm fortunate in that regard. But, you know, at the same time, being a lifelong learner comes with pros and cons because you always want to learn things, but you kind of have to figure out how to narrow what it is that you're doing so that you're not all over the map. Especially if it relates to your job, right? We want to make sure that what we're doing is going to actually be accretive to the team and to the firm. And so the learning path that I've got is based on the vision that I have for my team, which is basically evolving the team that I inherited about 3.5, nearly 4 years ago from strictly being competitive intelligence to now a combined CI BI group. And to be clear, the BI and the data analytics and data vision were in early stages, but that's okay. There's a lot to do to get there. But because we have a specific remit, I just have to remember when I'm choosing to undertake a new book or take a class, I'm like, does it fit into one of 3 buckets that I have laid out for myself that sort of roll up under this vision? And so these 3 buckets really are data strategy. And by that, let me be clear, this is management and maintenance of client development owned data. And obviously it's firm data, but it's data that the client development team had requested become part of the ecosystem here at this firm. And so it is our responsibility to take a look at that, make sure that it's cleaned, that it aligns with the firm's strategy. And it also reminds me of the teams that I need to work with. So data strategy is one area that I deal with. It's you know, what quality is the data? What data is missing? What do we have now? Who owns it? Who do I have to talk to make sure it's stored properly, like complies with, you know, security protocols, that sort of thing. And ultimately, how does all of this relate to the analytics vision that I have for my team? The second bucket is generative AI, which I'll be honest with you, it's the most fluid of the 3 that I'm going to talk about briefly here, because right now we're constantly experimenting to see where can we push the limits while maintaining compliance, again, with firm policy around generative AI, data sharing, what have you. Spoiler alert, there are not a whole lot of use cases right now, but the ones that we have found have been really important and very helpful in terms of boosting the efficiency of the team. For example, putting an earnings call transcript through, you know, ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever it is that you're using and asking it to summarize and then asking more questions of the data, depending on what it is that you're trying to pull from that document as sort of like, what has the lawyer asked to learn more about? And then the final bucket is strictly data and business analytics. And in that regard, that one is so much fun for me because most of the time right now, I spend my hours in Python. I will not claim to be an expert in Python. For those of you listening to this who don't know what Python is, at this point, I'm sure you all do, but it's a very strong programming skill that can be, or programming program that can be used to do many things, but for my purposes, it's for data science and more advanced analytics. So it's sort of like I'm not going to insult it by calling it Excel on steroids. That's not what it is. But it's a coding language that allows you to do pretty much everything all in one place. You can ingest your data, streaming or otherwise. You can clean it right there. You can analyze it. You can do machine learning right there inside of Python. And depending on the libraries that you have, you can create your own data visualizations all right inside of Python, which, if any of you just heard what I said, it could mean that you don't need Power BI. It could mean that you don't need anything fancy like Power Query and Power Automate, like other things that require money to automate certain types of processes. Python is so powerful, it can do all of these things for you. Now, it just depends on your use case, whether or not that's the right one. But getting back to what it is that I do with it, I'm experimenting with it in all of the different ways that I just said, because I'd like to figure out where can I push the limits of our data and our reporting using a single tool that can add value without asking the firm to spend more money, if that's even possible. We'll see. And of course, one of the things that I'd like to start doing with Python that could be of interest to others on this call is figuring out how to use it, and possibly in conjunction with Alteryx, another tool that we have, to do some automated data labeling. So like many others, who might listen to this, we all struggle with the quality of our data, especially as it relates to industry. And so if we can get a taxonomy in place, which we have a taxonomy in place, but for those of you who don't, if you can get a taxonomy in place, trying to figure out how can you automate the labeling of your client data in a secure manner so that there isn't one person who's spending hours and hours every week trying to get that data ready for any future analyses. So hopefully that has all been clear about where my mind is at with respect to Python and where I want to go with that. Now, there are a lot of resources that I use to get myself into the mindset of all the things that I just described. I would be remiss if I didn't just go ahead and start with Anaconda. Anaconda is a company that has a cloud version of Python, and they've also got learning. They've got free learning, they've got paid learning, they've got Jupyter Notebooks, which I won't go into Jupyter Notebooks here, but suffice it to say, I love Jupyter Notebooks because it allows you to test code in a way that feels easier. Like it's more understandable when you can go line by line and you test it and you see the results. And you're like, okay, I see what I did there. Let me go back and try something else. It's very clear about what you're doing. Highly recommend Anaconda. From a learning standpoint and just from general use during the day, it's wonderful. I also go to TDWI, that's tdwi.org. They have a ton of actionable hands-on data science courses. I've taken classes from them before on Python and other types of training like data governance so that I can boost my skills there, be a better firm, consumer of firm data. DAMA International, that's DAMA. I'm currently studying for my data management certification because I also want to make sure that I understand the whole ecosystem of what it takes to make sure that data is safe, secured, ready for access, and ready to be used for, any kinds of analyses. And where do those analyses go once you've used the data up? Where do they live? There is a website called Packt, P-A-C-K-T. They have online and print books that I've been using for years now that are about data science, programming. Very easy to read, very well written. A lot of them now have AI assistants on the website, obviously, that you can ask questions of the book in case you're like, I just kind of want to get to one thing here. I don't need the whole ocean. Give me an answer to X. It now has the ability to let you do that. Chief Data Officer magazine, it's called CDO. Of course, I'm not a chief. I'm an associate director. I have a long way to go. But I love seeing how those people think. What is it that makes them tick? What are the challenges they face? How can I learn from what they have gone through and what they go through? The last two are very specific to data science. KD Nuggets, Medium, and Towards Data Science. Those three, I kind of lumped them all into one because they are online news resources where data scientists, other analysts will come on the platform and write about, they might give you code like, here, I did a market basket analysis using Python. Here's all my code. Here's what I was trying to do. Here are the challenges I faced. Here's what you need to know. Really great stuff. And then finally, Kaggle. There are open source data sets there. I highly recommend that to everyone who wants to fool with data, but like me, cannot use client data for many types of projects because of the security issues. If there are so many different data sets that are open source, you just have to know what you're looking for, and you have to know what level of commitment you want to make. And by that I mean, if you're not very strong in the basics of like data wrangling, where you're scrubbing your data, you probably don't want to get a crappy data set, because you're going to have to figure out how to scrub it before you can do any kind of analysis with it. But it's got all kinds of different data sets of all sorts, all stripes that you can play with. And then of course, I've just got a ton of books, data-driven law, visual analytics, storytelling with data, data science strategy for dummies. Don't knock it. It's fantastic, even though it says it's for dummies. And then I've been reading also a series of books by a gentleman named Jorge Brazil. They're called Before Machine Learning, volumes 1 and 2. They're on linear algebra and calculus. If you want to be a data scientist, you must understand the math. There's just no getting around it. Otherwise, the rest of us we're just data analysts. And there's nothing wrong with that, to be clear. But data scientists really have a very strong understanding of math, advanced math, and statistics. And so I'm always trying to refresh myself, because I haven't been in college for a while. So I needed to go back and do that. Just, really what I would advise anybody who's thinking about evolving their career in the same way that I have is just pick your lane and start there. Figure out what it is, what kind of problems do you want to solve for your firm, and then start the learning down that path. And then once you've sort of done that quick win, hopefully it's a quick win, and you've accomplished that, then start branching out. The field is so vast and wide, and there are so many ways that you can get lost in all of the writing and all of the webinars and by snake oil salesmen, quite frankly, who say they know how to do X, but when you push them on it, they don't really know how to explain it. You need to educate yourself. So even if you never want to be a data scientist, you can at least be a good consumer of a vendor coming to you, or you can be a good consumer of your firm's data and understand the limitations, risks, the benefits, all of those things.
That's huge.
That's where I am. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, no, so wonderful. Thanks so much, Lynn, for sharing. I think that's such a good point. You've made so many good points, but what problem are you trying to solve? How can you help the firm solve that problem? And to your point, depending on where you are in your career, sometimes it's just kind of getting up to speed so that you can be a good consumer of that information as we all work together. And things are constantly evolving and constantly changing. For those that were listening in, Lynn has clearly provided a lot of great resources, several of which I plan to take a look at, and we'll make sure to drop those in the description of the video chat so that you can go take a look, and really just encourage everyone to start somewhere, right? You don't have to start big, but just take a look at some of those resources. I actually block time on my calendar on a weekly basis in hopes to do some professional development and continued education. It's so easy to kind of get bogged down in the day-to-day. So easier said than done, but for those of you that can carve out some of that time, even if it's just a half hour a week, that starts to add up really quickly. And feel free to reach out to Lynn. I know she is always willing to chat with folks, and she's a wonderful resource. So thanks again, Lynn, for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.